This is the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to episode 3 of the Talkin Bout the Hoosiers podcast, presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. I'm joined by Kyler Staley, and I'm Drew Rosenberg. No Alec today, Kyler, but we still got a great show for the people today.
We do. It's crazy. Third show in, and Alex already, he's already too big time for us. So I figured this would happen. I think it would happen this soon, but I don't know, man. A little sus. I think he's got some important things going on. So we'll continue without him though.
Yeah, going a little Hollywood on us, but we'll man the fort today.
Absolutely. Drew, how are you doing today? We don't ever ask you how you're doing. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm doing great. I mean, I'm excited. IU versus Louisville this weekend, Saturday in Lucas Oil Stadium. It's gonna be a ton of fun. Big game for IU. I mean, what's not to be excited about?
Right. And there's a sense of I don't know if I'm overstepping here, but I feel like there's a sense of positivity with this Indiana fans a little bit. Just what they've shown. The first 2 weeks went about as you expected with Indiana. A little bit over expected it, I guess, a little bit when you looked at how they performed with Ohio State and everything stayed with them for the most part. And then they just took care of business with Indiana State, looked really good for the most part. But going into this game, sense of excitement, I feel like on both sides, even with Louisville as well, they have a lot to prove and Indiana has a lot to prove as well. So I think it's going to be a really fun, evenly balanced game on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, the feeling on campus, it's like kind of mixed. I mean, I hear from some people they're still super down on the program just because of the past couple of years.
Right.
And it's like, oh, Indiana State wasn't like, we're expected to win that game by a lot. But then also you hear some people who are pretty excited. I mean, the defense has looked very good. The offense is still, some question marks, but might as well jump right in. I got first thing of news. I mean, it's pretty obvious place to start. Tayven Jackson announced this is starting quarterback moving forward for Indiana.
Yeah. I mean, in my opinion, like it matters, but in my opinion, it was the right move. With Tayven, I said this for multiple times. I said this throughout the summer. There's a reason why you went out and got Tayven Jackson. No knock on Sorsby or everything. He looks like a pretty solid, manageable quarterback, but Tayven Jackson is just that other special level of talent. You see it on the field. He's not in his full form yet as a quarterback. He's still super young. He makes those mistakes. There's still things he's learning on the field, and you can definitely see that. But for him to get the reps, for him to eventually become a really good Indiana football quarterback for the long term of this program, however many years he is going to be here, he's got to get these reps, and you got to throw him to the wolves right now. Because you're going to look back, a couple of years down the road, if he's still here and he's going to be the quarterback or whatever, you're going to look at this Louisville game. You're going to look at what he did versus Indiana State. You're going to look at the rest of the year and be like, you know what, he needed that. He needed to learn from that. Then going into next year, he should be a much better quarterback than the year after that. I think it's the right move. We'll see. He's got a challenge this weekend for sure. I mean, he's going up against a Power 5 school, a surging Power 5 school. So we'll see what he's about. But I think for right now, on paper, Tayven Jackson as your starting quarterback in the long term is the way to go about it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, unless Sorsby was significantly far and away better than Jackson, which I can't watch every practice, but what we've seen on the field just hasn't been the case. You had to go Jackson. I mean, he's the name. You brought him in for a reason. He's a highly touted guy. Was recruited by almost every school in the country. Ended up at Tennessee, but kind of got buried in that quarterback depth chart. So came back home to Indiana, and I mean, you had to go Jackson. And I think the Indiana State. I mean, I think it was like PFF had him as like a top 5 performance this past weekend. Was 18 for 21, 236. No touchdowns throwing, but he did run one in. I mean, it was a really good performance from him. Yes, Indiana State's not like the best program, but like Sorsby wasn't bad, but Jackson was significantly better in this one.
Right. And if you actually you touched on it, he did have one scoring touchdown or whatever. Indiana had 5 touchdowns that game, if I remember correctly. Tayven Jackson was on the field every time they scored a touchdown. Yeah. Sorsby, even though it was a little surprising to me that Sorsby and Jackson didn't get the equal amount of snaps like I thought they would in the second game. But I think that was just the flow of the game. And I think Tom Allen, I feel like in the middle of the game, really made up his decision at quarterback. And he was just like, we got to let Tayven just run this for a little bit. the Indiana offense, even though there's still some question marks with it, I feel like when I watch them, they have a little bit more confidence, a little bit more swagger when they have Tayven Jackson in the field. The offensive line looks a lot better protecting him versus a primarily stationary quarterback and Brendan Sorsby. But like you said, Sorsby, if he would have made significant strides or he would have shown that, yes, he's by far the better quarterback, we would have we'd have some discussion on them starting Tayven, but he didn't. And I really like the way that Tom Allen went about it. On paper, it was a little of a head scratcher for them not to have a starting quarterback going into the week 1 of the season. But I like how he did it. I like he wanted to see them in a game setting. It's something that you can't see in practice. You want to see how they perform on the field. And by far, Tayven Jackson just looks like he has the most upside and most potential out of that quarterback room.
Yeah, I mean, I agree completely there. Sorsby was, just because he was not as highly touted, I kind of said it, he was always going to have to do a little more than Jackson. If it was a tie, it was always going to go to Jackson, but it really wasn't a tie. Jackson kind of separated himself in Indiana State, which we really weren't sure was going to happen. Kind of thinking with an Indiana State team that was, let's face it, not very good. And we didn't think there would really be any separation, but boy, were we wrong, as Jackson was significantly better in this one.
Right. Just took over the game. He did what he had to do. The offense overall, stalled a little bit in the game or whatever. There's still a little bit of question marks. And I think that's more of like an offensive coordinator play calling type of issue. But as far as on the field play, Tayven Jackson was the guy, and he proved that in week 2.
Yeah. The last kind of note I had for news is involves at Louisville, who are our opponent on Saturday. Indiana is likely to cancel the next 2 games in the series. I mean, got a lot of slack for that, but it makes sense. I'm not surprised to see it, just because with the Big Ten schedule, how difficult it is to make a bowl game in the Big Ten. You want to win all your non-conference games, and you're going to play a really tough conference schedule no matter what, just being in the Big Ten. Making sure you can get 3 non-conference wins under your belt gives you a lot better chance at a bowl game. So I completely understand what the program's doing.
Right. And, at the end of the day, it's a business move. That's what it is. It's not an emotional one by any means. It's a business move. Indiana is getting a lot of slack from the diehard Louisville fans for the cancellation, because I think that they wanted to, see this series. It surprised me. And I think I was reading one of your stories you wrote for us. It really surprised me that Indiana and Louisville's only played twice all time in football. I mean, that threw me off. I was like, that can't be true. And then you look back, I was like, yeah, that's true. So I guess when you think of Indiana Louisville, you always think of basketball, but you would have thought that they would have played in football a lot more than what they did. But at the end of the day, like you said, Big Ten's getting bigger. It's growing. It's going to get even more powerful than what it already is. You got to schedule some teams that you can win. Bowl games are they're very achievable, but they're hard to come by a lot of times too. Getting 6 wins is not as easy as what a lot of people may think, especially with a program like Indiana, who's kind of still on a rebuild from 2 seasons ago when they were, almost in the Big Ten championship. They had to rebuild these past 3 years. They're just not in a position right now to have this kind of series with another Power 5 school. Give it 3 more years or so, let Indiana get back on their feet, hopefully, and then down the road, get the series back up and going. But I like the move for right now. I don't think Indiana football by any means is scared to play Louisville. I think it's just a business move that they had to do. You had to add an FCS team, which we presume that they're going to do. That's not confirmed by any means or whatever. It's going to be a team that they should beat. Yeah. We probably know that. So it's a business move at the end of the day. But it is kind of unfortunate for a fan's perspective, because you do want to see them play Louisville and everything. But they got to do what's best for the program right now. And I think for right now, it's the right move.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you look at some of these other programs. Look at Michigan, for example. Their non-conference schedule this year. East Carolina, UNLV, and Bowling Green. 3 home games, 3 non-Power 5 teams that Michigan, they've won 30-3, 35-7, playing Bowling Green this week. They'll probably win by a lot. So it's like, if the big programs are doing that, going to get their free 3 wins and then go into a really tough conference schedule, why should Indiana make it harder on themselves when knowing, especially right now with the current Big Ten East and West, we're playing Michigan, Penn State, Ohio State every single season?
Right. And like, Indiana football is not comparable to Michigan football by any means right now. But you don't even see Michigan scheduling a series like that or an Ohio State scheduling a series like that. So like, you're exactly right. Why should Indiana have to? Why should they be getting, kind of crapped on by, fan bases and stuff like that by outside national media and everything for canceling a series? It just doesn't make sense. You really got to look at the finer details of where the program's at and what they need right now. They don't need a series with Louisville right now. Louisville's in a kind of a different, even though they're building as well, they're kind of in a different stage in their football program than what Indiana is. We're really trying to build from the ground up again. Having a series like that just doesn't work out. Like I said, 3 years down the road when Indiana's, back and they got their feet under them and stuff, maybe you reinvent or you re-look at this series potential again. But right now, not the right move in my opinion.
Yeah. I mean, like I saw someone on Twitter kind of comparing it to what Indiana fans talk about with Kentucky basketball, how they refuse to play in Bloomington.
Yeah.
And it's just not the same at all. Indiana has historically been a bad football program. It had some success a couple years ago and then went kind of back to what's been the norm for the program. Trying to get bowl games, winning 6 games for Indiana football, that's a successful season. For Kentucky basketball, they're trying to win national titles and playing an Indiana team in basketball where like if you lose a game in college basketball, it's not a killer. Versus college football, losing a game is a lot more significant than in college basketball just because of the shorter season.
Absolutely. You're spot on with that. And I don't know what people I don't even want to see people comparing Kentucky versus Indiana basketball versus to Louisville versus Indiana football. That's not comparable at all. Yeah. And besides, that Kentucky Indiana rivalry is a very historic rivalry that was taken away from everybody when it shouldn't have been. And it's still mind-blowing that it's still not a thing anymore. So you can't compare Louisville versus Indiana football-wise. Now, that would be different if you're talking about basketball, because that's, again, another rivalry that needs to happen again. But anybody that's comparing those two, I don't think they know what they're talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you see a lot of that on Twitter these days, and it's not great. Very entertaining app, but also very chaotic, and
very toxic,
everyone has an opinion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially college sports, very toxic. All right, I think we should do a quick recap of the Indiana State game. I don't think we need to go too much into it just because, I mean, it's Indiana State. There's not going to be too many takeaways. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to start with the defense. My prediction last week was Indiana would shut out Indiana State. They did not do that, unfortunately, because of a fumble recovery touchdown by the Indiana State defense. But Indiana's defense did not allow a single point.
Right. I mean, they didn't do it. It was just an unfortunate, mistake on Jalen Lucas's end. And he, talking to him after the game, he'd be the first to admit it. That's all his fault right there. He's got to secure the ball a little bit better. But Indiana's defense showed out again. They didn't allow maybe 1 or 2 drives I can remember that got a little bit close. I think there was a time where Indiana State had a chance to kick a field goal and everything, but they went for it deep in the red zone as well. But, they're also working on things too. They knew they weren't going to win this game or anything. So they're working on, different, 4th and down situations and things like that. So you understand that. But Indiana's defense showed out like you thought they would. Andre Carter was a beast. Nick Toomer, he continues to impress me. I think he's making a case as the best transfer right now. I really do. I mean, he is a takeover machine. He's a 2-time turnover belt champion, if you want to say that. So he's doing good, man. And, that defense is playing really well. And I'm really impressed with the secondary by Indiana. Really impressed. I thought they were going to really struggle, especially when they fought, when they went up against Ohio State. I thought they were going to struggle. They didn't for the most part. And this Indiana defense is legit. I think they're going to play a major role this weekend, but they took care of business with Indiana State, and that's what they needed.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of question marks about this secondary. Super young, inexperienced, a lot of transfers, new faces. But through 2 games, they've passed every test. Louisville's another test they're going to have to face. They're going to have some tough guys they go against. Jamari Thrash is one of them, speedster wide receiver, but we'll get to him and the rest of the Louisville roster in a bit. Some of the stats from this Indiana State game were kind of hilarious looking at a box score. Indiana State had 93 total yards, 21 passing yards, and 72 rushing yards in the game. In comparison, Indiana had 214 rushing yards and 344 passing yards. They had
Wow.
double the amount of rushing yards that Indiana State had total yards.
It's pretty impressive, right? That's
Yeah,
pretty
I
impressive.
mean, it's Indiana State, so it's one of those things like you can't really take too much from the game. One thing I do want to note, Omar Cooper had a huge game, 7 for 101, I believe redshirt freshman.
Right.
Or yeah. It's in his second year, but I always get the redshirt confused with that. But yeah, I mean, he was a part of that very good recruiting class Tom Allen brought in after that great 2020 season.
Yeah, Omar Cooper, Indiana's coaching staff, especially Tom Allen, super high on him. He's just been an athlete all his life. I remember watching him. Didn't watch any of his football games in high school, but I remember watching him when he played at Lawrence North with CJ Gunn on the basketball court, and you could just tell he's a natural athlete. That's what he is. He's got all the physical tools that you want. You see wide receiver out of him and everything, and Tom Allen really specifies he's got really strong hands. He makes those really, iffy, 50-50 ball catches and stuff. That's what he does. The Indiana staff's really high on him. And he had a really, I guess you just call it a coming out party. That was his game where he was like, I'm here. I'm ready to contribute and everything. And that's another weapon for Indiana. They got playmakers all over the field with Cam Camper, Jalen Lucas, Henderson, all those guys and everything. Yeah, and Omar Cooper. That's pretty good for Indiana and their offensive wise. Now it comes down to how is Indiana going to open the playbook and get it to those playmakers. That's a whole nother question. But they got the guy, and Omar Cooper, him showing that type of performance is really, really positive for Indiana, especially on the offensive end. He's going to be a really good player long term for Indiana. He'll probably end up being Tayven Jackson's, go-to guy in these next couple of years if they're both of them are still here. You never know what the transfer portal and all that thing works and stuff. But for right now, those two look like a real dangerous combo. And if Omar Cooper can continue that production, that's another weapon for Indiana that they need.
I mean, yeah, you said it. Indiana has playmakers outside. The receiving room is very deep. The running back room is deep. It's just getting these guys in space, getting the ball to the playmakers is kind of the thing. How is Walt Bell going to open the playbook? Now that Taven's the starter, kind of talked about how Indiana State, they weren't really going to open the playbook completely. Now with Louisville, big game. I don't want to call it a must-win game, but a very important game for bowl chances. You wonder are they going to open up the playbook to get EJ Williams, DeQuise Carter, Cam Camper, Omar Cooper, all these guys the ball in space and let them make plays and do what they're good at.
Yeah, they definitely have to. They can't really play around with offensive play calling all too much this game. You kind of understand what they did with week one. It's week one. You're trying to make things simple, whatever. Indiana State, you don't want to show too much with them, but you also want to show a little bit of positivity of what this program can do. Louisville, you got to throw everything out there. You got to be creative. You got to be, willing to make that extra play. You can't play like you're trying to keep up with them because overall, on paper, these are two pretty balanced teams. Going up against each other. I know Louisville's a 10-point favorite and everything, but kind of in the same boat and everything. Louisville's not, they're not Ohio State. They're not Michigan playing Indiana. Indiana, this is a game that they can win. But they got to show it on the offensive side, and a big part of that is getting into their playmakers.
Yeah, I want to note one thing from the Indiana State game, like a big negative I took away. Same thing from the Ohio State game, penalties. Too many penalties from Indiana. In the Ohio State game, they had 8 penalties for 75 yards. Indiana State game, 7 for 60. That trend can't continue if this team is going to make a bowl game. No, penalties kill your offense, kill field position, hurt your defense. And if Indiana is going to win 6 games, which seems like the goal for this team, they got to do a better job at playing disciplined.
Absolutely. It's a little tricky. One, sticking with the penalties, yes, that's absolutely just embarrassing. Indiana's on track right now to be one of the leading schools in penalty yards. And they're just really dumb, stupid penalties too. Really silly, running into the kicker, those type of things. And a lot of that, I feel like it's, you got to blame a little bit on the coaching staff and stuff for not getting these guys mentally prepared for these type of games. And especially, you don't want to throw shade at the special teams coach. You don't want to throw shade at them, but a lot of these dumb penalties, the blocks in the back, the holding on returns, just the running into the punter, those things, silly. Those are very avoidable. They shouldn't happen. If they happen in the Louisville game, Louisville's going to take full advantage of that. They're already explosive enough how they are. They're already a creative offense and everything. You got to win field position with Indiana. You got to give Indiana footballs the defensive side. You got to give them the advantage in this game. Short yardage drives and stuff that Louisville's going to be set up for. If you're running into the kicker and those things, you're just going to shoot yourself in the foot, and Indiana's going to have no chance to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should just jump into Louisville because kind of perfectly didn't. You're going to have to be disciplined against Louisville. This is a very good team. They have a high-powered offense. They're scoring 47.5 points per game on the season so far. 2 games, but they've scored almost 100 points total in 2 games, which is ridiculous in college football, especially with the new clock rules where you're not getting nearly as many possessions as you would in the past. And they're led by their high-powered rushing attack, averaging 285 rushing yards per game. I don't want to say exactly, but I believe they're at 7 rushing touchdowns in 2 games on the season, something like that. This is a very good rushing attack, led by Isaac Guerrero and Jawar Jordan. Indiana's D-line is going to have to play big, and they're going to have to be a big part of this game if Indiana's going to want to win.
Right. This is we touched on it a little bit. This is a very explosive type of offense that Indiana is going to face. You can even make the argument that this is the best offense that Indiana is going to face all year. Even, you want to throw in the Ohio States and Michigans and stuff. Jeff Brom's always been this type of coach where he wants to be creative. He wants to throw down the field and everything, and he wants to get the running attack going. Indiana so far, we're 2 games in. Indiana's front 7 has done a fantastic job, stopping the run, doing a pretty good job with that. They did well against Ohio State, even though they have a little bit of running back issues on their end. They did a good job with that. You're going up against a very experienced running back duo with Jordan and who's the other guy? I can't pronounce his last name. Starts with a G. But he's a 5th-year senior, and he's from Indiana, so he kind of knows what the program's about and everything. So, but yeah, Indiana's front 7 is going to be big in this one. You can make the case they're the most important part of this game. If they can stop the run and especially, apply pressure to the quarterback a little bit, I think Indiana's got a big chance in this one. It starts with the front 7 with Indiana, then the rest will follow. They can slow down the run game, even, just for a little bit, to allow the defense to build some momentum, to allow Indiana's offense to get chances and stuff, which will be huge. But stopping the run game has got to be one of the key points in this game for Indiana. You're going up against a really good running attack, like you said. It's going to be a challenge, but I think this Indiana front 7 is going to be up for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a difficult task. I'm just going to skip right to it. My key player for this game, it's Aaron Casey. Stinger, linebacker, leading tackler on the team last year. I believe he's the leading tackler on the season thus far. Indiana is going to need to stop the run in this game because Louisville likes to run the play action. Jack Plummer, they like to throw it downfield, but they set it up with the rushing attack. And if Aaron Casey can help stop that run, which he did a great job against Ohio State, Indiana State, it will be huge for Indiana's chances in this one.
Yeah, you can make the argument that Aaron Casey is probably Indiana's best player. He's played fantastic. Like you said, he's leading Indiana in tackles. He's being that defensive quarterback that they needed. He's really stepping up this year. It goes back to media day when we spoke with Aaron Casey about how he said that, he wants to get Indiana defense back to what it used to be, to get back to Tom Allen's special. That's what Tom Allen is. He's always had great defensive teams. You look back at the Michael Penix team and everything, that was a great defensive unit. Aaron Casey's got a lot to prove, and he's got a good supporting cast right now. Andre Carter's been great with that, but he's going to be big about stopping the run. I think he's going to want to prove a lot this game. He's on a national stage here. He wants to really show what this Indiana defense can do. And, it keeps going back to stopping the run game. That'll be a big, big thing for Indiana.
Yeah, I almost picked Andre Carter. I was back and forth between him and Aaron Casey, but it's the same message either way. The O-line of Louisville is a strength, and Indiana's D-line is a strength. It's strength against strength, and this game is probably going to be decided in the trenches on that side of the football. If Indiana's defense, specifically the line, can hold up, I like Indiana's chances in this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you 100% on that.
I kind of jumped into mine. Do you want to give your key player for this the Louisville matchup?
Yeah, I think the key player, I guess it's a little bit of a cop out here, but I'm going Tayven Jackson. That's the key player. I mean, we talked about how great the Indiana's defense is. You know, they're going to be the most important unit in the game, but I think the most important player is Tayven Jackson in this game. And that's a lot of pressure from a guy that just found out that he's going to be the starter moving forward. He is the guy. They're going to rally around him. That's who they're going to protect. He's going to be the guy that's relied on to get Indiana over the hump. He's got a lot of pressure on him. You know, redshirt freshman like this, you know, with an Indiana team that's trying to get back on track, get their feet back from under them and everything. There's a lot of pressure on him, but he is the key player. He's got to play well. He's got to play like he has the last two games, and especially like he has against Indiana State. A completely different team. Louisville and Indiana State are not comparable at all. But Tayven Jackson's just got to take care of the ball. He's got to read the plays right. And he's just got to be a smart quarterback. And he's got to be the quarterback that can extend the play. He's got to be a playmaker himself. You know, that's why Indiana brought him. That's why a lot of schools like Tennessee recruited him. He's a playmaker. He's a very talented quarterback. He's got to show that talent, and he's just got to play with a lot of confidence. He can't let the stage, you know, the lights get too bright on him or whatever. He's just got to be a very manageable quarterback. You don't want to see a lot of struggles with him. He'll make mistakes. That's a given. But you want him to see those mistakes limited, and he's got to do that. To me, he's the most important player on the Indiana side of things in this game.
Yeah, I think a big thing for Indiana thus far has been they haven't turned the ball over. And that's going to be big. If Tayven Jackson can protect the ball, that's going to be key. But another thing is Indiana's yet to throw a passing touchdown. That's another thing. We got to get the passing attack, opened it up a bit more in Indiana State against Indiana State, but IU and Walt Bell, Tayven Jackson, they got to open up the passing attack a little bit. They got to become more of a threat in the air, and because that's going to open things up for the running attack. And the rushing attack versus Ohio State, it was not great. The offense itself just wasn't great. Yeah, two quarterbacks, a little mixed rhythm. Now Tayven Jackson's your guy. You got to let him throw the ball. He's going to make mistakes. He's a redshirt freshman, but you got to be okay with that, because if you're not willing to let him make mistakes and push the ball down the field, you're going to have a little dink and dunk offense that doesn't really work. And you're trying to get 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8 every single time, like against Ohio State, which just did not work for the Hoosiers.
Right. I mean, if you're going to go back to the Ohio State game and they're going to run that type of offensive mindset where it's going to be run every single play, 1 through 3, that's going to be the run. It's going to be a run play. I'm just going to say it. It'd be a waste of all the talent on the offensive side of the ball. That's what it would be. You're wasting the wide receivers that you have. You're wasting the playmakers. You're wasting Tayven Jackson, what he could do, what he could possibly do. Indiana's got to get the passing game going. Like you said, if they do that, it opens up the running game, and then you have a really balanced offensive game. That's the formula of a good offensive team. They got to get both involved, and it starts with the passing game. And those playmakers, the Omar Coopers, the Carters, the Cam Campers, if he's healthy enough to play or whatever, they're going to be ready for this, and they're good enough to make plays. They're good enough to get away from Louisville secondary, which I understand that they have a little bit of health issues going into this game as well. They have a chance right here to make plays. They got to get away from the defenders and everything, and Tayven Jackson got to be able to find them. It also starts with the play calling. Walt Bell's got to open it up. He's got to be creative here. You know, going back to his coaching stints as an offensive coordinator, he is at best when he gets his playmakers involved. And that's what he's got to do with Indiana. Indiana's got a lot of talent on paper. You just got to use them.
Yeah, I mean, Tayven Jackson is going to make some plays that make you say, wow, but he's also going to make mistakes. He's a redshirt freshman, but you got to just trust him to let him make those mistakes, but also let him make those plays. If you don't give him the trust to let him throw the ball down the field or even throw the ball, period, like we saw in the Ohio State game, he's not going to get better, and he's going to stay the exact same player as he is right now. And Tayven Jackson is a guy that hopefully will be starting at Indiana for the next 3-4 years. If everything goes to plan, I think that's what Tom Allen would like. We're back after little technical difficulties. I think the power might have went out in Bloomington. Not exactly sure what happened. You probably saw if you're watching on the YouTube. My lights just went out while I was talking. So little chaos, but you know what? A little adversity might be good for us. You know, build some character for the podcast.
Yeah. We need to show the listeners that we can get through anything, and we're going to give you the best entertainment possible.
Yeah. Battling electricity, Wi-Fi problems, doesn't matter. We're still going to finish this episode out, and might as well just jump right into the spread. So Louisville opened as a 10-point favorite in this one. Tyler, what's your prediction? Does IU cover the 10 points?
Absolutely, they do. I just don't understand why Vegas is so hard on Indiana. They are just brutal. The 3.5 win total, the 30 plus points against Ohio State. Indiana's done well. They've covered their spreads the first 2 games and stuff. I just don't know why Vegas would have a 10-point spread, with Louisville versus Indiana. You would expect this to be like if it was Indiana versus, I don't know, Ohio State, something like that. But I think Indiana's going to cover. I think it's going to be a lot closer game than what people think. Indiana's defense is going to play really well. I think they're going to disrupt the offense a little bit. But as long as the offense of Indiana gets going and stuff, I think they cover pretty easily in this one.
Yeah, I'm on the same boat. I think Indiana covers. Going into the week, I was a little shaky. I think it's going to be right around kind of 9-10. I think it's a game Indiana can keep close. I mean, with over under 52.5, the implied score of the game is 31-21. I think Indiana can keep it a little closer than that. I'm kind of seeing this game around 27-23. I think Indiana loses a close one, but I think they do cover the 10 points.
Yeah, that's a big number. That's a big number for this type of game.
Over under 52.5 though. What are you leaning on that one?
My gut is I'm gonna go with under. For me, for some reason, I keep thinking in my head that this game could be a shootout, but you also got to think of Indiana's offensive struggles a little bit as well, which I think will limit them and stuff. Louisville's not gonna face the type of defense that the teams that they played so far. They're gonna play the best defense that they've played so far. So they're going to play Indiana. I think they're going to be shaking up just a little bit with it and everything. I think Indiana's defense is going to be key on this one. I think they're going to limit the explosive plays a little bit. I think it has to go under here. I just don't see both teams putting up this big of offensive performance to go over 52.5 points.
Yeah, I agree. I think Indiana, they want to slow the game down. They want to limit possessions, especially with a high-powered offense of Louisville. So I just don't think Louisville's going to get the possessions to score 40 points like they've been scoring all season. And I think Indiana keeps it close enough to where we see an under here. I hate betting unders. It's not fun. The over is so much more fun. But I do think it's an under in this one.
No, nobody ever wants to bet the under. Are you kidding me? That's a boring thing. But I feel like the under's always, I feel like they always have the better advantage a little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I think Vegas might set the over under a little higher than they actually think because they know people want to bet the over.
Yeah, or Vegas just doesn't really care too much about this game, and they're just setting lines like they just don't really care. So, but they've been brutal on Indiana this year. Been brutal. So I don't know. Maybe it'll take Indiana for them to win this game for them to kind of wake up a little bit.
Yeah, maybe an Indiana win outright could be what it takes for Indiana to get some favorable lines. I also want to note we haven't really talked about like the records as much. We kind of talked about we were gonna. Kyle, you're 3-1 right now through 4 picks. I'm 1-3. Alec is also 1-3. I had a tough first week with Ohio State going 0-2. You went 2-0 that week. Last week we all went 1-1, but we'll get Alec's picks before the game Saturday. But 3-1, you're leading the group right now.
So what you're saying is I'm beating Vegas right now. I am better than Vegas. For all you gambler listeners and everything, I know exactly what I'm talking about, and I have the secret ingredients. No, I'm just kidding. It's all about getting lucky and stuff. And I'm just, I've been kind of high on Indiana this year for what they can do and what they, put together. I think when you put a team like Indiana that's playing with a sense of desperateness and stuff, they're going to perform a lot better than what people may think, even with the dreadful past 2 years and stuff. So, with my picks and everything, I look at what Indiana is going up against, what's on the line in a lot of these games. So, I'm just pretty high on Indiana right now. I'm not saying they're going to be in the Big Ten championship or whatever, but I think they're a bowl team this year. So I guess that just kind of translates into me being good in my picks, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it's also important to note for the listeners, these are our picks. They're just for fun. If you want to bet on them, you can, but like we're not going to be responsible. Gamble responsibly if you are going to gamble. We're just guys who like to make predictions for have some fun, watch IU and write about the team, but we aren't experts. It's important to note that.
No, we gotta make that clear. This 3-1 right now, it's probably going to be 3-10 before it's all said and over with. So don't trust me on a whole lot of these.
Yeah, honestly, with the way I've started, they might make more money just betting the opposite of everything I bet.
Tail Drew and Alec, whatever you do, tail them, I guess.
Yeah. With that being said, I don't have anything else. Kyler, do you got anything?
I mean, to recap all of this, I think this is the most important game for Indiana football the last 2 years. I really do. I think this is a game where a lot can happen. If they win this game, it brings back a lot of positivity to this Indiana fan base, to the Indiana football program. They prove something a little bit. They win this game. It proves that they're on the right track. They lose this game, it's not as dreadful as what it has been in the past few years or whatever. Louisville's a really good team. But winning this game does a lot more than losing this game, obviously. But this could get Indiana back on the right track, get them projected to a Pro Bowl, or not Pro Bowl, a bowl game. Get this into, 3 wins. Potentially they beat Akron next week or whatever. 3 wins heading into the majority of the Big Ten play would be huge for Indiana. So they just got to be competitive for the most part. They got to show a lot of fight in this. Clean up the silly mistakes. Clean up the silly penalties. Defense, come out like you have been playing the past 2 weeks. Offense, show what you can do. Get your playmakers involved. And, honestly, we got a game out of this. It's going to be a fun one, though. This is a really fun game. And 2 teams you don't get to see play each other in every year. At Lucas Oil Stadium, all the downtown people in Indy that are going to this game, it's going to be a fun time. It's going to be a great atmosphere. It's exciting. I think the Indiana fans are a little bit excited for this, especially if they win this game. I know a lot of people get back on the Indiana football bandwagon if they do. So gonna be a fun game. Indiana's just gotta be competitive. They gotta show a lot of fight in this one.
Yeah, I mean, you said it, big game. Going to be an exciting atmosphere. I'll be there. You'll be there as a fan.
Right, the quote unquote fan. I will be there as a spectator with somebody. So I'm gonna be sitting with some Louisville friends. So that'll be interesting. We'll see how that goes. So I know they're pretty fired up about this game.
Yeah, good luck with that. But for all things Indiana athletics, football, basketball, follow Indiana_FRN on Twitter, Facebook, and check the HoosierIllustrated.com website. Make sure to hit subscribe on YouTube and Spotify. Follow me, Kyler, Alec. We are going to have everything you need for Indiana athletics. Basketball media days next Wednesday. Ton of exciting stuff happening with Sunday or Saturday big games. So a lot to look out for on the Hoosier Illustrated site.
Yeah, absolutely. Make sure you guys follow all of our stuff. This is a pretty growing website. We're growing pretty quickly and everything. So always got some good content. We're busting out, 9 to, around 9, 7 to 9 stories a day and everything. A lot of info going out there and stuff. So make sure you follow all of our socials. Go to HoosierIllustrated.com to get all this IU information. Got a lot of previews, recruiting, football previews, basketball previews are coming up. So it's a good time, and it's a really awesome website to check out. So make sure you're following all of our stuff.
Yeah, and for you Indiana basketball fans, there could be some exciting news coming pretty soon. Like, there's some stuff in the works with this team right now that we're maybe could be seeing pretty soon. That could be pretty exciting. So a lot to look out for. Make sure you guys are following us to see all of that and all this exciting news that's surrounding Indiana athletics.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and with that being said, thank you guys for listening to the Talking About the Hoosiers podcast presented by HoosierIllustrated.com. We'll be back next week with our recap of this weekend and our preview of Indiana's next matchup with Akron. And I guess the recap of Louisville, threw that in there. But yeah, all right, we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.